When you move into a new place, you generally know how to make it functional. Like you put a bed in the bedroom, you put a couch in the living room, and suddenly, it's a home.
Right, yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's highly logical.
Yeah.
You're basically designating specific spaces for specific activities, which is just a very human way of asserting control over an environment.
It provides this sense of psychological comfort, really. I mean, we manipulate the layout of our physical space just to dictate our daily routines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But imagine if, just by placing like a very specific type of clay pot in the corner of your room and pouring a very specific texture of sand on the floor, your entire biology shifted.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine if those inanimate objects literally triggered a dormant biological switch in your endocrine system that changed the entire trajectory of your life.
It sounds totally bizarre.
It sounds like science fiction.
Yeah.
But for a tiny fish called the Apistogramma, placing a clay pot and light sand in its environment is, well, it's the exact biological switch that controls its future.
It is a perfect example of how environmental manipulation works at the micro level. Because, we often think of biology as an internal process, but in a lot of ecosystems, internal biology is completely at the mercy of external architecture.
Which is exactly what we are exploring today in this deep dive. We are pulling from a remarkably focused set of notes on fish keeping that detail the precise and honestly surprisingly complex art of what is called priming.
Right, yeah, priming.
Specifically priming an Apistogramma pair for breeding.
Yeah.
We're looking at everything from, substrate choices to tank architecture and the intense behavioral observation required to even know if the environment is actually working.
Yeah.
So if you love learning how seemingly simple systems hide massive biological complexity, you are going to find this fascinating.
The overarching mission here is to extract key insights about deliberate environmental design. We really want to analyze how creating a microenvironment isn't just about, putting water in a glass box.
Right, obviously.
It's rather about understanding the mechanisms that bridge inorganic materials with organic behavioral shifts, and eventually how that functional biology blends into artistic form.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before any organism can thrive, let alone reproduce, it needs the appropriate real estate.
Exactly.
And the notes we are analyzing focus really heavily on the foundational physical setup required for this Apistogramma pair. The two non-negotiable components laid out are an artificial cave made from a terracotta pot and a surrounding floor area filled with light sand.
Just those two things.
Right. Now, looking at this setup, it's kind of like house flipping or prepping a nursery, right?
Yeah.
I have to assume the mandate for light sand over heavier gravels isn't just an aesthetic choice. Is that strictly a mechanical issue to protect the fish's gills during foraging? Or is there a structural reason related to the nest itself?
What's fascinating here is that it's actually both, but it goes much deeper into the realm of sensory feedback.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When we talk about priming in a biological context, we are talking about a lock-and-key mechanism. The fish's reproductive instinct is a locked door, and the physical texture of that light sand combined with the enclosed darkness of the terracotta, well, that acts as the key.
So the sand is literally communicating with the fish on a physical level.
Exactly. I mean, the Apistogramma evolved in specific benthic or, bottom-dwelling river environments in South America. Their lateral lines and barbels are incredibly sensitive to substrate grain size.
Oh, wow.
So if you put them on heavy, coarse gravel, the sensory feedback tells their nervous system this environment is too turbulent. The current has washed away the fine sand.
Meaning the eggs won't be safe here.
Precisely. The hormonal cascade required for breeding simply will not trigger.
That makes total sense. If the river is rushing so fast that only giant rocks are left on the bottom, any eggs you lay are going to get blasted downstream. So the light sand signals that the water is calm and the riverbed is stable.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And the terracotta pot serves a similarly functional role. In the wild, these fish rely on submerged roof structures or deep riverbank crevices to hide their offspring from predators.
Right, and a standard glass tank doesn't have any of that.
None of it. It offers zero vertical or lateral security. But terracotta is porous, it's earthy, and it acoustically deadens the space inside.
Oh, the acoustics. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it mimics the sensory deprivation of a deep, secure crevice. You are engineering a habitat with inorganic clay and sand just to convince an organism's ancient neurological hardware that the rainy season has arrived and resources are secure.
You're basically hacking their biology with interior design.
You are. Without the right architectural cues, the biological software remains completely dormant.
Okay, so the stage is set. We have the terracotta cave, we have the light sand acting as our biological green light. But placing the props on the stage doesn't guarantee the actors are going to perform the play. How do we actually know the fish is reading the cues? According to our sources, this brings us to a highly specific phase of behavioral observation. The notes point out that female apistogrammas are natural sifters,
Very true.
and the observer is currently watching her constantly poke through the sand, specifically sifting through decaying aquatic plants that have settled on the tank floor.
Yeah, this sifting behavior is an incredibly common action to observe in these environments, but it requires really careful interpretation.
But wait, if she is actively sifting and digging through the sand to find food among those decaying plants, isn't she effectively testing the substrate?
Well,
I mean, she's interacting with the environment, moving the sand around. Why wouldn't we view that as a direct sign that the setup is a massive success? She's comfortable enough to eat and interact with the exact material you put in there for her to nest in.
and that is the ultimate trap of the impatient observer. Yeah, it is what we might call a biological false positive. Now, it is undeniably a good sign that her stress levels are low enough to allow for open foraging. She isn't cowering in a corner, so her baseline survival instincts are intact.
But survival isn't the same as reproduction.
Not at all. Foraging is just a baseline biological imperative. Regardless of whether she feels secure enough to produce offspring, she has to eat to stay alive.
Right.
So by sifting through those decaying plants to extract microorganisms, she is proving that the environment can sustain her life. She is confirming that the light sand is safe for her gills. But the threshold for survival is drastically lower than the threshold for creating new life.
That is such a critical distinction to make. Just because the kitchen is fully stocked doesn't mean you're ready to start a family.
That's a very fair way to look at it. The sifting behavior tells us the environment is acceptable, but it hasn't yet confirmed if the environment is optimal. You can provide an environment that perfectly mimics a safe foraging ground. But if the internal assessment of the terracotta cave or the overall stability of the tank isn't perfect, she will eat your food, sift your sand, and never breed.
So what does this all mean? If watching her sift through the sand and decaying plants isn't the finish line, what actually is? The source notes provide a highly specific answer, and it brings us to this, honestly, agonizing intersection of environmental design and forced human patience.
Yeah, patience is key.
It's like building a beautiful wooden birdhouse for your yard and just having to wait. You provide the absolute perfect materials, but you cannot force nature's timeline. The definitive sign that this female apistogramma is actually primed and ready involves a two-part sequence.
Right.
She must fully occupy that new terracotta cave, and she must physically excavate a pit in the sand inside of it.
And the observer specifically notes that until she exhibits this exact nesting behavior, one must assume she isn't ready.
It reminds me of the mechanics of human sleep. Like, you can buy the most expensive, scientifically engineered memory foam mattress on the market. You can black out the windows and set the thermostat to the perfect temperature.
Exactly.
But you cannot consciously force your brain to enter REM sleep. The environment can only invite the physiological state. It cannot demand it. If you lie there getting frustrated that you aren't asleep yet, you actually push the biological goal further away.
That is a much more accurate way to view this dynamic, because we often operate on a timeline of instant gratification. We finish assembling the tank, we smooth out the sand, and we expect the biological result to immediately follow the completion of our task.
Right. I did the work. Give me the result.
Exactly. But the apistogramma is running an evolutionary checklist that operates on a completely different temporal scale.
So what is she actually doing during that waiting period? Why does it take time for her to start digging that pit?
She is processing thousands of subtle environmental variables over time. Is the water chemistry holding steady? Is the decay rate of the aquatic plants providing a consistent enough bloom of microorganisms to feed future fry?
Oh, she's planning ahead.
Oh, entirely.
Yeah.
Is the lighting mimicking a stable canopy? She requires prolonged exposure to these constants before her endocrine system releases the hormones required for reproduction.
And when she finally does move into the terracotta and starts digging out that specific pit in the sand, mechanically, what is the purpose of that pit? Why isn't the flat sand inside the cave good enough?
By digging the pit, she is modifying your generalized architecture to suit her highly specific needs. The pit creates a localized microcurrent within the cave.
A microcurrent.
Yeah, it ensures that when water drifts into the terracotta pot, it circulates down into the depression, providing constant oxygenation to the eggs, while the raised lip of the pit prevents those same eggs from rolling out into the open water.
Oh, that is brilliant. She's manipulating the fluid dynamics of the tank.
Exactly, and excavating that much sand requires a massive caloric output. A fish will not expend that kind of physical energy unless her internal biological assessment is absolutely complete.
Wow.
The pit is the undeniable physical manifestation that the priming process has succeeded.
But getting to that point requires such a profound psychological surrender from the human designing the tank.
Oh, yeah.
You have to just sit there watching her sift leaves day after day, knowing you can't push a button to make her dig. If you get impatient and move the pot or change the sand, you ruin everything, right?
If you constantly tweak the environment because you are impatient, you are continually resetting her biological clock back to zero. You are introducing chaos into an environment where she is desperately looking for stability.
Which introduces a really fascinating dilemma. What happens if the biological goal is never met?
That's the big question.
What if she just keeps sifting leaves forever? She never digs the pit, and the fish never breed. Does that mean the entire setup, the careful selection of sand, the placement of the terracotta, is just a functional failure? Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources outline a planned next step that fundamentally shifts the philosophy of this entire project.
It represents a major evolution in how we view enclosed ecosystems.
The notes state that even if the breeding attempt ultimately fails, the terracotta pot and the light sand function beautifully as decorative elements in the tank. But the creator isn't stopping at mere decoration.
Right.
The planned next step is the addition of something called Indian almond leaves to achieve an authentic blackwater look. And the notes highlight that this serves a dual purpose. It dramatically improves the overall aesthetic, but more importantly, it significantly improves the health of the fishes.
Yes.
This transition from purely functional husbandry, like trying to force a fish to breed, into creating a holistic, visually striking underwater world pulls the creator directly into the art of aquascaping.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, analyzing the mechanics behind this blackwater aesthetic reveals something incredible about natural systems.
Okay.
The Indian almond leaves bridge the gap between artistic form and biological function in a way that completely redefines the purpose of the tank.
Let's dive into the chemistry of that. Because when most people visualize a fish tank, they picture crystal clear water, bright LED lighting, and pristine white gravel.
Yeah, very sterile look.
Right. But the blackwater aesthetic is the exact opposite of that.
It is entirely different. In natural South American tropical environments, rivers often wind through dense, overhanging forests. Massive amounts of organic matter, like leaves, branches, seed pods, they constantly fall into the water and decay.
Makes sense.
As this material breaks down, it releases heavy concentrations of tannins and humic acids into the water column.
Which is what tints the water brown, right? It looks like a giant steeped cup of tea.
Yes. The water takes on a rich, transparent amber or dark brown color. That is the visual hallmark of blackwater. And adding the dried Indian almond leaves to the tank is specifically done to mimic that natural decay process.
But the notes explicitly say this will more so improve the health of the fishes. So this isn't just about making the tank look like a moody, artistic photograph.
No, not at all.
What is the actual mechanism at play here? How does brown, tannin-stained water make a fish healthier than crystal clear, purified water?
Well, clear water in a glass box is often a sterile and, ironically, highly stressful environment for a wild species.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tannins released by the Indian almond leaves don't just change the color of the water, they chemically alter it. Tannins are naturally mildly acidic, so as they leach into the tank, they gradually lower the pH of the water.
And why is a lower pH beneficial?
Because many of the pathogens that threaten these fish, specifically harmful bacteria and the fungal spores that notoriously destroy fish eggs, they cannot survive, or at least they struggle to replicate, in acidic environments.
Oh, wow.
The humic acids physically interact with the cell membranes of these pathogens, restricting their growth. By adding the leaves, you are literally steeping a medicinal tea. The environment itself becomes an active extension of the fish's immune system.
That is incredible. So the leaves are providing structural cover, They are diffusing the harsh lighting, which probably lowers their stress, and they're chemically neutralizing pathogens.
Exactly.
It's a full-spectrum health intervention disguised as a pile of dead leaves.
And that is the ultimate realization of what true aquascaping is meant to be. It is not just underwater interior design.
Right, it's not just arranging rocks so they look pretty to the human eye.
It is the point where aesthetic beauty and biological wellness become inextricably linked. The choices that make the tank look like an authentic, beautiful slice of nature.
The warm amber water.
Right, the warm amber water, the rustic terracotta, the scattered light sand, the decaying almond leaves. They are simultaneously the exact functional requirements for the organism to thrive. You aren't forcing a choice between a tank that is beautiful and a tank that is healthy. In a blackwater aquascape, the beauty is the health.
The beauty is the health. I love that framework. And it completely neutralizes the concept of failure in this scenario.
Yes, it does.
If your initial goal was purely functional, like you wanted to breed the Apistogramma, and she never digs that pit in the sand, you haven't actually failed. You've simply succeeded at a broader, perhaps more meaningful goal. By adding the leaves and embracing the blackwater aesthetic, you've created a slice of authentic ecology that actively sustains, protects, and enriches the life within it. You've transitioned from being a fish keeper to being an aquascaper.
It requires a profound level of respect for the organism. You're no longer just using the environment to extract a specific result, like breeding from the animal. You are curating a world that honors their evolutionary history.
Which perfectly encapsulates the journey we've taken through this single, highly concentrated microenvironment. We started by examining the deliberate architectural setup required to hack biology, analyzing why porous terracotta and the specific tactile feedback of light sand are required to prime a dormant reproductive instinct.
And then we moved into the nuances of behavioral observation, breaking down the female's natural sifting behavior among decaying plants, and learning to navigate the trap of false positives by distinguishing between baseline survival foraging and true environmental readiness.
We confronted the absolute necessity of the waiting game, realizing that human timelines and impatience hold no sway over the evolutionary requirement of a fish preparing to alter fluid dynamics by digging a pit in the sand.
And finally, we saw how functional biology blooms into artistic form, how the strategic addition of Indian almond leaves to create a chemically active, acidic, blackwater environment shifts the entire endeavor from mere husbandry into the holistic, health-enhancing art of aquascaping.
It is a massive amount of insight to pull from a few detailed observations of a single glass box. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want you, the listener, to take a moment to reflect on your own life.
Always a good exercise.
Think about the microenvironments that you curate for yourself every single day. Whether it is the specific ergonomic layout of your desk at work, the color temperature of the lighting in your bedroom, or even the curation of the digital apps on your phone's home screen.
Oh, absolutely.
How do those specific, deliberate environmental choices influence your own readiness, your cognitive focus, and your baseline daily behavior? Are you engineering your own metaphorical terracotta caves and light sand to prime yourself for the deep work you need to do?
It's a vital reflection. We often view ourselves as separate from nature, but human neurology is just as susceptible to continuous environmental cues as any aquatic organism.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with one final lingering question to ponder long after you finish listening today. We have seen how introducing something as wildly simple as a clay pot and a handful of dried almond leaves can completely alter the behavior, the immune health, and the underlying biological purpose of a living species.
Yeah.
So look around the room you're sitting in right now. What hidden environmental triggers, placed there by accident or perhaps by someone else, are subtly shaping your own daily instincts, your stress levels, and your decisions without you even realizing it?
It certainly makes you wonder who is designing our tank.
It really does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep observing your world.